So I feel a sense of responsibility for this message, and in terms of it's my job to get it out there and to share it in ways that people will understand it. I think that if I have one job, it's to be a communicator of happiness, of the research, of the tools, of the practices. And so my role is to find ways to be effective in doing that.
Hello, I'm Nina Westbrook, and this is the Do Tell Relationship Podcast. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, a relationship expert, and a generally curious person fascinated by exploring the many ways we connect with one another. I'm here to guide you through the twists and turns of navigating your relationships with authenticity and compassion. Join me as we dive into candid conversations with health experts, celebrities, and overall interesting people, exploring their philosophies on relationships, life, wellness, and making a lasting impact. So grab your favorite beverage, cozy up, and let's explore what truly matters in life. Welcome to the Do Tell Relationship Podcast, where every episode is an invitation to deepen your connections and live your most authentic life. Let's get into it. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Do Tell Relationship Podcast. I'm your host, Nina Westbrook. Today, we're welcoming back an old friend. Her name is Stephanie Harrison. She's the founder of The New Happy, and she's working on her new book. And I'm so excited to have her come share with us her philosophies on what it means to be happy, what it takes to be happy, and where they come from are so interesting. And I can't wait for all of you to be refreshed if you've already met Stephanie in the past, or meet her today and hear all about her philosophy on what makes us happy. I think that it'll be a great episode. Before we jump in with Stephanie, I want to hear some of your questions. So again, we're welcoming back Megan to share what you guys have shared with us.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. And I have our first question from the audience today, which is, I'm anxious that I've missed out on good things in the past or that I might miss out on good things in the future. How can I reframe my mindset to stop focusing on what ifs?
When you're talking about the what ifs or the things of the past or the things of the future, the common denominator in that is the fact that we don't have any control over any of it. So I think everything that's happened in our past is behind us, and there's no way for us to change those things. The only thing that we can do now is shift our mindset and shift our perspective and do things a little bit differently, because we learn from the things of our past as we move forward into our future. And when it comes to our future, we can't really predict the future. We don't know what's going to happen. So by focusing on things that we, again, don't have control over, there's so many circumstances and scenarios that we can run around in our brains for things that have not happened yet or things that we think might happen, but maybe they won't. It can cause a lot of anxiety. It can feel very real for you. So I think that being able to focus and hone in on the what's happening in front of you, and taking something that feels really grand and finding small parts and small pieces to really focus on can help to relieve some of that anxiety about the future. And also just an understanding and a self-awareness about the fact that we don't have any control over the future. All that needs to be done in a lot of circumstances or a lot of scenarios is just a shift in our mindset and a shift in the way that we think about things. And rather than thinking about the things that we're missing out on in the future, we can focus on the things that we will miss out on in the present if we don't put our time and our energy and our thoughts into what's happening today. And we're so busy worrying about what'll happen in the future.
Wow. I love that. That's incredible. I mean, I'm like, that's so helpful. But I love those memes about like laying in bed thinking and spinning about what's going on, what's going to happen. And it's like, we don't know. And also reframing. Sometimes we talk about that, challenges and obstacles right now, the ones we're facing right now, kind of reframing what that means. Like, it doesn't mean failure. It doesn't mean that. It can mean it's just an opportunity for growth. So it's like that mindset shift you mentioned.
It's 100%. And I think that anytime we're thinking about the future or the past, I think everything that happens to us and all the experiences that we go through they're just going to propel us forward. Even though in the moment it might feel like something that's really hard, or it might feel icky or feel bad. I think that if well, the only thing that makes it bad or icky is that if we don't take that information and that experience and learn and grow from it. Otherwise, it's just a part of the human experience, right? To go through obstacles, to have failures, and to learn and to grow and to expand and to change.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Okay, next question. Is there a program or system for goals, like goal setting and achieving goals, that you recommend?
I do. And I think I'm going to use my phone to pull from. But the specific goal setting tool and skill that I like to choose from, or that I like to pull from, is called SMART goals. It's all about creating specific, measurable, achievable, and relevant and time-based goals. I think that what makes setting goals so difficult, or sometimes they feel like they're not attainable. I think that what gives us that feeling is when we're not creating SMART goals, when we're not creating goals that we can achieve. And I feel like if we are realistic and we are setting goals in a way that they can be measured, so that we can see if we're working and moving towards our goals. And then if we are also setting goals that are achievable, like, what is your goal? I think that anything is achievable depending on how you preface it and how you work at it, and the resources and the opportunities. There are things that seem achievable and things that maybe are not as achievable. But if you're creating achievable goals within the circumstances that you're working in, I think that is also helpful. And then I think that giving yourself time and knowing when you are creating these goals, you're being realistic about how much time it's going to take you to achieve the goals. I can't say that I want to build a boat or build a ship by tomorrow afternoon at 3:00 because I have dinner plans. If that is my goal and it's a skill set that I need to learn, and I have to find who's going to teach me that skill set, and then I have to find the materials and the tools and whoever is going to help me to build this boat, this could take me years, right? So I think that by creating SMART goals, it helps us actually and gives us a better chance to actually achieving the goals, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And keeping our mindset in that kind of productive, forward thinking, because we're checking some boxes along the way, as opposed to feeling like we're never going to get there with some massive goal.
Exactly. I think that that's important. Is like, in any time you're setting goals, you want to be able to. You want to feel encouraged, and you want to feel like they're actually attainable and that you can achieve them. So that's why your goal setting skills need to be smart.
Smart. Perfect. Okay. Love it.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing all of your questions. I know we have Stephanie joining us shortly. If you have any questions that you would like to submit for future episodes for me to answer, find the link in the description. I can't wait to hear what you guys come up with. Hi. Welcome. Nice to see you. It's so excited.
So great to see you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Of course. I can't wait. You have so many really exciting things coming up.
Oh.
So I'm so interested to hear your take, but I also want to dive a little bit into your past. I know we've had the opportunity of crossing paths. I don't even know how long ago that was. It feels like forever ago.
A long time ago, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it was extremely, I don't know how long ago it was, but it feels like a long time ago. I think so much has changed, and watching you kind of, I want to say, evolve and into this amazing presence on social media that we all love to follow, and sharing all of your little nuggets of wisdom and dropping gems on all of us every day on Instagram. We love it.
Thank you.
Can you share with me a little bit more about your origin story? You're obviously someone that is very inspirational in all the work that you do to make an impact. Where does that originate? And do you find that there's a specific moment where you knew that this was the type of work you wanted to do?
Wow, that's so generous of you and so kind. Thank you. It's so funny. I think that whenever I look at people who I find inspirational, it's always because of what they've overcome and what they've been through, like how they've faced their challenges and used them in some way. And I think that, the origin of my own work now really comes in the same way from the challenges that I personally went through when I was in my teens and my early 20s, really struggling to feel good in any possible way, struggling to be happy, struggling to have a grip on taking care of my own mental health, or feeling as though that there was some greater purpose in the world and something that I could contribute to. And so a lot of what I try to create is, content for that prior version of myself who didn't know all of this this information from the research. And so really, when I think about my own journey, it really comes from being a very sad, very lonely, very lost person and struggling to figure out what to do, how to fix that. And ultimately what happened for me was I decided that I wanted to pursue the study of happiness. And there was this field that was just sort of rising up in academic disciplines called positive psychology. And the timing was amazing because it was starting to bring out a lot of these answers and approaching them in a new way. I think, the study of happiness has had many different approaches over the years. And this was really the burgeoning scientific way of asking some of these questions that, traditionally philosophy or religion or spirituality have really tried to take on. So that desire to study happiness really came from a desire to figure out what I had done wrong, where I had made mistakes and why I was so unhappy. And then ultimately it has evolved into wanting to help other people to learn that same information so that they can hopefully avoid experiencing the ill-being that really comes from living in our world in so many cases.
Mm-hmm. I think that your approach is so, I resonate with it so much. And I remember you shared your journey where you're traveling and you were on a mission. And this is where you really got to practice and hone in on your skills, your skill set as someone who has kind of mastered this idea of creating happiness by and through giving.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about your journey in terms of you went to Africa?
India,
right?
Yes.
India.
Yeah. When I was in high school, I had the opportunity to go and volunteer at a mission in India that was devoted to caring for people who had leprosy or who were otherwise experiencing ill health conditions that often left them without any sort of social safety net or otherwise affected their relationships with their family and loved ones. So it was really a gathering place that offered care and compassion to anyone who needed it. And the founder of this mission, he was a, very successful lawyer who decided that he needed to use his life for a better purpose. And the whole ethos of the mission was that everyone has a need to both give and to receive, to help, to feel useful and to provide service to other people, even when they are going through something that's really, really hard. And that experience profoundly shaped my understanding of what it means to experience any sort of real lasting well-being, not, the short-term pleasures that are so abundant in our society, but something that's deeper and truer. And what I believe is really, what we're all searching for. And it was that experience that helped sort of light the spark in me that maybe the real secret to happiness is in giving. Is in being of service to one another. And what would it look like if we were able to create a world where people knew that and where we were able to create institutions of reciprocity and mutuality and of support, which I know is obviously something that is really important to you as well.
Yeah. And I think that so many of us can really resonate with that as an idea, because if you think about it and think about a time in your life where you were able to help or extend support or kindness or love or whatever the case may, resources to someone else who was in need of whatever that resource was at the time, and think about how it made you feel to be able to do something like that to help someone else. I just feel like we always receive feelings of happiness through giving and through sharing resources and through community, sharing stories or knowledge or all of those things, which is really great because that's what you're doing now. You are an author now.
Almost. It's so crazy.
What can you speak to me a little bit about that journey into becoming an author and what that's been like for you?
Yeah, so really, I started The New Happy, which is my company. I started that in 2018, and it really began as just a newsletter where I was sharing some of these findings that I had discovered when I was in grad school, and thinking that, maybe there were a handful of people out there who would also be interested in learning some of this information. And then, I worked on the newsletter for a few years and then ultimately decided to work full time on The New Happy, and my goal being to share this new philosophy of happiness that I've developed. And I started, I realized that, everyone learns in different ways, right? Like we all have these different modalities of helping to integrate information. And what that kind of indicated to me was that perhaps there was a new way to communicate these ideas that would really connect with people. And I thought about, if you watch like a Pixar movie or something like that, right? Like you walk away with these beautiful life lessons about what's important and how to treat people and how to treat yourself and all of that. And I started thinking that perhaps we could use artwork to communicate these ideas. And so I started making this art to share the new happy messages. And, I've always been a visual thinker in terms of visualizing ideas or concepts in my mind. And so it was something that came very naturally to me. And then, to my utter shock and surprise, people really connected with it. And ultimately, it ended up gaining, a large community of people who were excited about consuming information in that way. And from there, I got an email from my editor at Penguin who, said, we love this. Would you ever be interested in writing a book? And of course, it was my lifelong dream. So I immediately jumped on my bed and said, yes, of course. And then that was in 2021. And I've been, really working on it pretty much the whole time ever since then.
What you said is really, it like sparked an idea in me. I feel like if for anyone who has not seen the New Happy website, newsletters, or Instagram account, or heard your podcasts, you have to see it. It's such a beautiful way. You have such a beautiful way of creating visuals to demonstrate and videos to demonstrate your messaging. And I think for so many people, we've never really seen mental health. I mean, and I will say a lot of people do use graphics and different things to try to convey their messaging, but I don't really know if I've ever seen someone do it quite as interestingly or as beautifully as you have. And I feel like it's the fact that what it does is it helps to disarm people when they can see something beautiful, when they can see something and how it kind of looks, and they can see what the feelings and the thoughts look like on paper or on the screen versus just reading about it. I feel is that special little niche that you've been able to kind of incorporate into your practice. So I think that you've done a really amazing job with that.
That's so kind of you. Thank you.
Yeah. So there's a science. You said this is a science-based, evidence-based practice that you are implementing. And can you talk to us a little bit more about the science behind it and the science behind helping others in order to achieve happiness?
The way that I've developed this philosophy was when I was in grad school, I completed, like a final thesis project. And what that involved was my first attempt at documenting all of the research that I believed supported this assertion. And so I ended up writing this, 150-page thesis there, which was the beginning of the book, really. It was sort of the genesis, and it was obviously the beginning of The New Happy as well. And so for the last, 10 years or so, I've been collecting all of these studies and gathering them into this approach. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about it is I'm also approaching this from an interdisciplinary perspective. And so while I was trained in psychology, I'm also pulling things in from, anthropology and sociology and political theory and religious studies, and trying to really incorporate these different ideas and see where those connection points are. And so specifically, when I think about the research around helping, studies have found that helping another person is one of the single most effective ways to boost your own well-being, not just in the short term, in the moment, but also in the long term. Weeks later, you can still see an impact upon somebody's well-being. And when you look at people who live meaningful lives, they all are centered around this ultimate goal of helping other people in some way, which can take many different forms, whether it's through your work or through being a parent or helping in your community. There's so many different ways to help, but it all comes back to both the cultivation of yourself as a kind and compassionate person, and then extending that outward to the people around you. And obviously that also includes your relationship with yourself too. You have to include yourself in part of humanity as you're learning to be kind to yourself and be kind to others. And so this message just kept coming up again and again in the research. The more that you can give, the more that you can cultivate yourself and then share it outward, the happier you become. And I was just amazed to see the evidence piling up, and it felt so obvious to me looking at it. It felt so apparent that this is something we've been missing. And in large part, I blame our culture for that, because our culture is really about incentivizing things that are not grounded in that.
Thank you for breaking that down for us. I feel like the part that the scientifically, like in our body, do you know how that manifests in our body? Like, what can you walk us through? I don't want to say like a PG, but like a simple version of how in our bodies it creates giving and doing for others actually creates those feelings of happiness.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's a phenomenon called the helper's high, which I think is a great term. So basically what happens is when you help somebody, you have the helper's high. So you experience this sort of surge of positive feelings flooding your body, and it can affect you and your everything from like your immune system health to your cardiovascular health, to the quality of your relationship with that person, to the way that you see yourself. And so this like physiological emotional reaction ultimately ends up suffusing you with this sense of joy or of even gratitude that you have the chance to do something like that. It provides you with this almost like an anti-inflammatory response through giving. And then so that's like kind of the in the moment reaction that you have. And then in the long term, the more that you help other people, the more likely you are to experience longer term benefits as well. So that's everything from, satisfaction with life, to ranking your life as being meaningful and having a purpose in it, to experiencing better health, better impacts upon your longevity. There's so much research that points to the benefits of both the momentary forms of helping and then also these ways that we can craft our lives around it and experience those long-term benefits.
Thank you for sharing and breaking that down for us. That's exactly what I was looking for. I don't know that everyone quite understands the physical implications of a lot that happens with us emotionally and mentally and how it manifests in our bodies. So I think it's so important to share and talk about. I think it's easier to conceptualize and understand pain or or happiness, or not happiness particularly, but to understand the things that are happening in our bodies that we can contribute to, an X-ray or something, like something concrete, which is why I think it's important to share the evidence behind all of the research and everything that we're talking about and the messages that you're sharing. So thank you for sharing that. In terms of your legacy, what do you hope to leave through your work, and how do you envision the new Happy contributing to happier lives and more fulfilling lives for yourself and for society?
Oh my gosh, you're going to make me cry. That's such a thoughtful question. If I could achieve anything in my lifetime, it would be to just share this message with people. I feel it's a great honor and a great privilege to get to do the work that I do. And every day I sort of wake up and think about how lucky I am that I get to do this. And so I feel a sense of responsibility for this message, and in terms of it's my job to get it out there and to share it in ways that people will understand it. I think that if I have one job, it's to be a communicator of happiness, of the research, of the tools, of the practices. And so my role is to find ways to be effective in doing that. And so for me, the greatest legacy that I could ever hope to leave would be helping people to understand that the pursuit of fame, of wealth, of power, of material goods, of promotions and achievement that's only self-focused, that's never, ever going to lead to lasting happiness. And the lies that our culture has told us are actually leading us astray. And the only way that we can find our own personal happiness and the happiness of our world is through giving and through being generous with ourselves and all of the unique gifts that we have been given and that we have cultivated.
I feel like in today's society, you've talked about this a couple of times, and what we often deem as success, I think ultimately ties into happiness in terms of what we think we have to achieve, or how much money we think we have to make, and how many friends we can have, how many followers we have on social media, and to think about those things and how that's how a lot of us are kind of driven in that way and motivated in that way. So having this different perspective and sharing information that we know to be true, which is that the amount of followers that you have on social media, the amount of people, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much money you have or how many followers you have on social media or whatever the case may be. If you don't have community, support, love, and you're not happy, your quality of life is not going to be the same. And it doesn't take a lot of social media followers. It doesn't take a lot of money. It doesn't take a huge following in order to create happiness, and you're showing us that and sharing that with us every day. So thank you for doing that.
Gosh, of course. I mean, it's so tough, isn't it? Because as you said, we live in this world that teaches us all of the wrong lessons about what we need to do in order to be happy. And those messages we internalize them, don't we? Like, we come to believe them. And I certainly know that I did. And it was, my own sort of wake-up call and breakdown that helped me to realize that that pursuit was never going to work. And I was really kind of seeking out all of the wrong things. And it was like I had been programmed to do these things. I didn't even know that I was doing something that was unhelpful, that was walking me further away from my ultimate goal. And I think that, it's really complicated and really hard because there are so many people who don't have, the resources and the support and the systemic structures to live a good and happy life. There are so many things that are standing in their way. And my argument is, like, we can do something about that. We can help them. And in the process, they can be happier. They can be set up to pursue the things that they uniquely can contribute to the world too. But we have a responsibility to make sure that we're addressing all of these places where happiness is being thwarted by these broader conditions. And by doing so, we too can experience happiness. It's sort of the ultimate win-win, as I like to think about it.
I love that analogy, a win-win. I also feel as though which we talked about this a little bit before you came on today, is this idea of having control and kind of being able to control what you can control. And I love the idea that placing your own happiness, I talk about this a lot on my platform, B'nai by Nina, by doing things for others and sharing kindness and giving and sharing resources, you're taking your happiness into your own hands. You can't control how much money you're going to have or how much money you make or how many followers you'll have on social media, how many friends you have. But this is the thing that you can control. And I think the ultimate goal for like you, I believe the ultimate goal in life is to be happy. And it's something that you can, that's attainable through and it's something that you can count on yourself for if you subscribe to this method of giving and sharing and community.
So true. That's so wise. Having that perspective is so meaningful, isn't it? Because as you're saying, like, when I'm having a bad day, I know in my head, okay, the best thing you can do right now is go out and help somebody else and try and reclaim some sense of control or agency over this day. And I always feel better when I do it, when I can remember to shift that focus from myself to others. And oftentimes that's all it really takes. And as you're saying, it gives you that sense of control of knowing, well, yes, there's a lot that's going on that's not something that I can do right now, and maybe I can't fix everything, but I can focus on one thing. I can help make somebody else's day a little bit better, and I can that leaves me feeling better, to your point.
Exactly. And I mean, I know a lot of times you hear, well, happiness is not something that happens all day, every day, and all the time, but it is something you can focus on. It is something that you can shrink down into something small in your day, like letting someone who seems like they're in a rush or they have kids go in front of you in line at the grocery store.
Yeah.
That type of thing where it seems like it could be so small, right?
Yeah.
It's also can be so meaningful for the person that you are helping or assisting. And can you talk about that concept of giving and what it looks like? To what degree does someone need to give in order to have this return of happiness?
It's such a good question. It reminds me of this moment in my own life that I often think about, which was it was back in, I think, 2019, and I was working at this job in downtown San Francisco and living about an hour outside the city. And so I had this long commute, and I was working really long hours there and going through a lot of challenges in my personal life, and just having one of those seasons of life, where you're totally overwhelmed and struggling and just trying to kind of get through every day. And I remember I drove home and, it's like 8:00 at night and I'm exhausted. And I remember, it's garbage day. Like, I have to take out the garbage. And, we lived in this house. It had a really long driveway. And I just was sort of having like one of those meltdowns where it was one thing too many to do. And so I sort of had a little cry in my car and then got out, and I saw that my downstairs neighbor who lived in the building beneath me had taken all of our trash out and all of the recycling. And I just remember feeling like, oh my God, that they don't know how much that means to me right now. Like, they don't understand how they just lightened my load a little bit. And it was this moment of kindness that I've never forgotten. And to them, it probably seemed so small, right? They might not even have thought about it. But for me in that moment, it was this gesture of love that, as small as it might have been, it told me that I wasn't alone, even though I felt alone in that moment. And I think about that time a lot because it's so easy to take those little things we do for granted, right? Like, just like you said, letting a stressed mom in the grocery store go ahead. We don't know if she's rushing to get home for a meeting, or if her kids have been sick and she really needs to get back to give them the food, or, we just don't have any kind of understanding of what's going on in their life and how meaningful it might be in that moment. And I think that the more we could look for those tiny little moments of kindness in our day, the better off we all would be, not only because as the givers we benefit, because the receivers also really need it too. And ultimately, hopefully we can all be givers and receivers. That's the point. We all have something to give in certain moments, and we all need something in other moments. And if we can establish this, further development of this interdependence between one another, then it allows us to meet each other where we're at. And so you can experience just so much joy just by saying, I'm going to do 3 little random acts of kindness today. And scientists have done studies on that and have found that it provides a profound personal well-being benefit. So that's like, I would say, the best place to get started. And if you want to be a happier person, start with finding 3 small ways to help somebody else today. And again, it doesn't have to be big. You don't have to change your whole life, but you can just go out and do something small that you think might help another person. And then if it helps you, if you feel good, if you feel that joy that we're talking about, then you can start to expand that and think about, well, what would it look like to devote more of my time to that? Is there volunteering that I can do? Is there a way I can focus on how I'm helping people through my work or the way I'm showing up in my community? How do I tie this to my hobbies or my passions in life? And then eventually you can keep going until ideally you have the opportunity to craft a life around the ways in which you want to give to others. But no matter where you fall on that spectrum, it's all wonderful and important and needed.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's so important because a lot of the times when we hear about giving, everyone thinks that there's always some type of monetary exchange, right? And that's not the case. There's so many small acts of kindness that you can utilize throughout your everyday if you wanted to, depending on how committed you are to the process. But in my card game, Do Tell card game, one of the consequences for not answering a question is to do a good deed.
Which I love.
Yeah. So it goes right along in line with that. So before we continue, I want to get more into your new book. I feel like we should talk about it some more and really get into whatever you're willing and able to share with us today. But we're going to take a quick break and we will be right back. If you're enjoying this episode, make sure to follow us on social media at Do Tell Podcast for more behind-the-scenes footage and clips. Visit us on benebynina.com for exclusive e-workshops, wellness guides, fitness and nutrition resources, and my Do Tell Conversation card game, all created to encourage a lifetime of growth, inspiration, and personal development. If you want to hear more episodes like this one, subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, where you will find all of my past episodes and interviews with other incredible guests. Welcome back. We're here with Stephanie. We're getting ready to wrap up. But before we do, I have a few more questions that I'd like to jump into. I want to talk about, because this podcast is about relationships and how we cultivate them and different tools and tips and techniques we use to kind of create the community and cultivate the communities in our lives. So what role do relationships and connections play in achieving personal and professional happiness for you?
Oh my gosh, what a great question. Everything. I think that's why I love this podcast so much and all of the work that you do, because everything is about relationships, right? Like I think that one of the biggest misconceptions that I think persists in our culture, which is really grounded in, our culture of individualism, is this idea that you can be happy by yourself. And I don't personally believe that. I think that any sort of happiness that you experience or well-being is enabled by other people. And yes, of course, you can cultivate inner happiness as a goal, as something that you would like to work towards, where you can feel happy without relying upon, like specific relationships needing to be a part of your life. But ultimately, everything is enabled through our connections with other people. Even if you think about your base level of well-being, where did the food that I ate for breakfast this morning come from? From other people. Where is, how is the house that I'm living in built? It was coming through other people. How am I having this conversation with you? Through our relationship and the connections that we have made, right? Every single part of our lives is facilitated and enabled through these relationships. And so my argument really in the book and in the work that I do is that we have to make those relationships central in every way and strive to cultivate them in ways that are mutually beneficial. But there's no such thing as happiness without other people. And if you think about the best moments of your lives, I'm pretty sure that you'll look around and you'll see that there were other people there or other people who made that possible. And when I think about how this applies to work as well, everything that I do would be meaningless without the community that surrounds it, right? If I was just making artwork and posting it for nobody, if I was just, or keeping it locked away, I would never experience the level of joy or fulfillment or purpose that I get to experience on a daily basis. And there's no new happy without the community of people that surrounds it. It is for them. It is enabled by them. It is supported by them. If they didn't exist, then nothing I would do would matter in the same way. And I think that we get really caught up in this idea of individual personal success and happiness and fulfillment. And I would personally like us to shift to a relational form of fulfillment and happiness and well-being.
That was, I really do enjoy the way you are able to make everything feel and sound so relatable, because there are people who would be like, actually, I think I am okay by myself. But you're like, no, because you have to think about the circumstances around what allowed you and has given you the space and the opportunity to be by yourself. I haven't heard it put in that way, but I do think we need community. And a lot of times, and I also want to say, these relationships come from everywhere, and they can be fostered many ways, in many different ways. Being single and being in a relationship is not something that is needed. It's not needed to have community and partnership through romantic relationships. We can have and create partnerships and community through all the different relationships in our lives. And so I think that's also important to know. But I really like that. It's kind of like thinking about the origin story of the space that you're in and that the food that you're eating, which last season, Sophia Rowe, she's a chef based out of New York, and I feel she said the same thing. She shared a lot of the same sentiments about community, and without community, you're not well mentally, and that you have to consider where everything comes from that helps to build and make up the community that you're living in. Yeah. So that's really nice.
It's so interesting, and you're totally right to point out. I think when we hear relationship, we automatically attach that in many cases to this romantic partnership. And I think, as you're saying, how do we expand our idea of relationship to encompass not just the people who we are closest with, but the people who are in all of our different expanding circles outwards, from, the stranger that, as you said, you pass at the supermarket, all the way through to the people who you have the most intimate and close relationships with. And then even more broadly, thinking about all of humanity and how humanity has contributed to help you to get to this moment in time, and all of the help that you had to receive along the way to get to any single moment that you're in. It's staggering when you think about it, right? Nothing gives me a sense of awe more than thinking about all that I have personally benefited from, and how hard I must work to give back in order to make an impact in any sort of way that could be worth all of that. And I think it's so easy, of course, to just focus on what we're not getting and what we're not receiving. And I also want to invite people to focus on what they are benefiting from, what they are receiving, and then how we can celebrate and amplify that. And of course, ideally, use one another's talents and strengths in order to help make it so that there's less suffering in the world, that everyone gets their needs fulfilled in all of the ways that are necessary.
That's a really good insight. And I'm interested to know, because there are so many challenges, there's so many difficult things and negative things happening in the world right now. So how do you develop or maintain this positive mindset? I don't think I can hear. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so with so many challenges and so much negativity and hardship going on across the world right now, I'm interested to know, how do you maintain a positive mindset during difficult times? Do you have any practices or rituals that help keep you grounded and optimistic about the future?
Yeah, I think a lot about because so much of, the new happy philosophy is about trying to intertwine personal and collective well-being. So I think a lot about this question, and obviously with as you're saying, with so much pain that just exists everywhere, and the threat of like always looming pain as well, with thinking about all the challenges we are going to face in our future. I really think that this is one of the core skills that we need to develop as individuals. And the way that I think about it and try and apply it in my own life is that I think there are two paths that you can take when you see suffering in the world or experience it yourself. You can become cynical and apathetic, which at the end of the day is a defense mechanism, right? Just to protect you from the suffering and the hurt and how hard it is, right? Or you can become more compassionate and you can become more courageous. And I think that learning how to try and shift as much as you can to the latter, in order to both be able to navigate your own pain, but also to alleviate the pain of others, is really one of the most important things that we can do with our lives. And it's difficult, of course, but there are tools, like we know from the science about what's possible. And I think that, one of the practical tools that I often use, and actually talk about this in the book, is how to shift from empathy to compassion. Because empathy gives us, when we experience empathy, we have this mirroring response in our body, in our brains, where we take on that pain. But we can shift to compassion, which is about how do we extend love to this person and then alleviate their suffering. And that actually doesn't have a negative impact on our well-being. It has a positive one. And of course, as a therapist, that's something that I would imagine in your training, that's part of what you learn how to do, is to make that shift. And I think that so many of us also need to follow in your footsteps and learn how to do that as well. And for me, the positivity and hope that I feel on a daily basis comes from helping people and from trying to continue to show up every day and say, well, I can't fix X, Y, and Z problem right now. I don't have the power or the influence to do A, B, and C and make those changes, but I do have some power. I can help in these ways. And by devoting myself to that, I experience joy and hope and optimism and all of the things that we want. And so again, like, I'm sounding like a broken record, but like, it comes back to helping. Like, if you're, I often think if you're feeling helpless, then it shows you need to help somebody, not to give up.
I think it's really important what you're saying, and it's so true. And I feel like sometimes when people hear like that they have a choice in the matter, that it's an option that they themselves retain when things seems like they don't have a choice or that it's more difficult. I truly believe that, like you said, with practice, you can see things through the lens of, glass half full versus glass half empty. And it does take practice, and there are tools. And I do think that even when you're making a choice to be happy, or you're making the choice to see things in a more positive and optimistic light, there will be, it's not always black and white, right? Yeah. There are going to be certain decisions and choices that you're going to make that might not help or feel really great in the moment, but that by making these decisions, you're building slowly towards that feeling of happiness, or building slowly towards that feeling of content and then happiness later on. You know what I'm saying? And so I think it's important to recognize that and the choice in the matter.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else that you would like to share about your book? I know I kind of got a gist of what you would like us all to gather from the book, and I know why you've created the book, but are there any surprises or anything new that we can look out for and within the book?
So the book is, I'm biased, but I think the book is cool because because it's not only kind of like a traditional self-help or nonfiction book, written about 70,000 words, but it also has the artwork in it. So there's full page artwork throughout the book. So similar to what we, share on Instagram and all that. In this case, it's a full page image, beautifully printed in full color. So every few pages, as you're flipping through and reading the book, you have this artwork to also help share some of the important messages, which I think is really cool and really exciting. And then, I think also I had the chance to share a little bit about, my own story and what I've been through in my life in the book, and navigating, my experiences, which included navigating the hardest time in my life while I was simultaneously building the new happy, and how that experience of difficulty was not something that prevented me from experiencing happiness. And my hope is that, we all go through big challenges in our lives, as you said. And I think that my hope is that in sharing some of that, people will feel like, oh, I don't have to eliminate these challenges in my life. I don't have to have a perfect life where everything is going exactly as I want. I can still find happiness here, even when things are hard or they're not going the way that I want them to. There are ways that I can treat myself that still provide me with joy and contentment and peace and connection, and hope. And my desire is that hopefully people will be able to see themselves in that in some way.
Well, I, for one, am so excited, and I cannot wait to read the book from front to cover to cover. And before you leave today, I would like to ask you a couple more questions.
Yes.
The first one being, what is the best advice you've ever received?
What an amazing question. I think I would have to say, you don't run out of love. You don't have this limited capacity for love. And so when you extend love to yourself, when you extend love to others, when you extend it to the world, you're not going to tap out. You just find more of it. And actually the more love you offer, the more love you find. And I think having grown up with more of a scarcity mindset around that, of thinking, oh, I can't do that. Like, I have to protect this love and, kind of keep it inside of me. Having that was really revolutionary for me.
Just hearing you say that, like everything is firing in my brain. I think it's so important for people to hear, because I do think that we will be challenged and we do go through difficult times. And I feel like sometimes that can harden us, and that can, have us kind of retreat and go into a shell and feel like we cannot put out and be who we are and give what we naturally have to give, which is that love. And we want to protect it, and we want to keep it to ourselves and keep it for the people that are closest to us. But I love what you're saying. Love is infinite, and it doesn't go away. And the more you give, the more that you're welcoming in. And all of us appreciate all the love that you have to share.
Oh, right back at you.
Yeah. And so this is going to be redundant for you, but one of my Do Tell card game questions is what does living a happy life mean to you? And we end every episode with this question. So you can go ahead and just bring us home.
Well, you know how much I love that. And I love that you end on that question. Happiness is helping other people and being helped in return.
That's it. Mic drop. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure chatting with you and learning from you and growing. And it's been great watching you along your journey. And we can't wait to check out the book. And all the information will be in the link in the description. I love saying that. And then everybody's scrambling to get everything in the link in the description. But the book is available for pre-order now, and officially releases or launches May 14th, 2 days before my son's birthday. And please grab a copy, and you can follow Stephanie at New Happy Co. Is it New Happy Co. or The New Happy Co.?
New Happy Co. Yeah.
New Happy Co. on Instagram. And her podcast, New Happy,
Thank
the
you.
new Happy, everywhere you listen to podcasts. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank
Or
you.
thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you for having me. I'm so grateful to be here, and I absolutely adore getting the chance to talk to you and learn from you. It's my joy. Thank you.
Thank you.